Grand Rising, everybody. Hope everybody's doing good. Hope everybody had a happy holidays. A lot of holidays happening during this time, and New Year is to come for the Western world. I don't know who else celebrates. Maybe Pat knows. I don't know who else celebrates New Year's like we do. Uh, at the either. Um, but a great time and happy holiday. So, um, wanted to start just to kind of talk. I know twin flames is such a popular term at this point and everybody's talking about it. There are individuals who are using the more shadow side of the twin flame narrative, which is kind of leaving people in this wounded space and not healing. So we kind of wanted to talk about the healing side of the twin flame and what that really means, and eventually offer trainings to individuals, particularly women who are in a specific role of the twin flame scenario, um, to help them heal parts of themselves so that they can fully learn to love themselves and start to really understand why they are experiencing the twin flame scenario, which is to live purpose, right? And to live your
Mm.
purpose and to bring this new rising paradigm into reality. But from a healed place. So it's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Um, and then, Pam, did you have anything to say about that before we just kind of jump in?
Yeah.
Any announcements?
Well, happy holidays for sure. It's been nice to kind of slow down and be in this in between space of Christmas and New Year's for sure. Um, No, I think we've definitely have talked about wounded and wounded energies, masculine and feminine, twin flame, like whatever, egos, all of the things. So I think definitely moving forward from that and looking at the healed aspect is really important because again, there's stages that take place and there's an evolutionary process there. So even I'm kind of currently getting downloads of like what's next for this new gateway threshold that I've entered. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's definitely definitely a lot to talk about for sure.
Sure. I know. It's a topic you go on forever with, right?
Mm.
Which is kind of nice. So, so basically, I think the a lot of the reason typically we do these on Tuesdays, but I was off on vacation doing a bunch of stuff and having fun and exploring life.
Mm.
And it was amazing. But I think with Pam and I, we've really have honed in on what is the narrative? How do we fit into this new dialogue? What is it that we want to create? How do we want to partner? And a lot of it first started that, her and I have similar ideas about life. We can both see kind of the same vision, and everything seemed to align perfectly. And what I thought, and I think maybe what she thought at the beginning was that, our partnership as Sacred Sisters was just the visions that we were seeing. And I think that it was actually not until I woke up and realized this whole twin flame scenario that it was actually the fact that we are twin flames and have a divine purpose, to bring this new kind of partnership between men and women back to the earth, to restore that sacred bond of
Mhm.
men and women having partnership. And that's how her and I really started to go, okay. And the yin yang symbol really is that partnership between these forces. Now, the problem being, and I don't want to say the problem, but I think the misconception happens that the twin flame is a sacred union of man and women coming together and, I don't know, having a relationship intimately and all that. And that's not really the goal of the twin flame per se. I mean, it can be, but it's not necessarily the end goal. The end goal is to manifest and create the vision for a new earth, and do it in partnership and harmony with both balanced male female individuals. And so wanted to kind of talk about that because the healing part of it is really this, it's kind of a it's harmonious. There's, I don't know, maybe Pam can kind of talk about it, but what's happened with us, I want to kind of talk about what's happened with us and why this kind of came to my mind of like a topic is that naturally when I did my own internal healing, naturally when I focused on loving myself and healing the feminine and masculine energies internally, naturally magnetized, a counterpart person or masculine energy, right? That um we can gel together, and there's no talk of being together. It's not a sexual union. It's not an intimate union. It's a union of bringing vision back to the world, bringing this leadership back into the world, this partnership, this understanding, and being fully able to communicate and feel safe with each other, which is something that's not happening as much these days. There's not a lot of trust and a lot of, right? We have all this other dialogue going on, but to experience the healed part of it is such a beautiful place to be.
Mm,
And that's
absolutely.
not to say shit doesn't show up, excuse my language, right? We're
Oh no, it
human.
definitely does. It, I consider it speed bumps
Okay, yes, okay, yes.
instead of
Speed bumps.
triggers. Yeah, it's like, oh crap, okay, this is new terrain. This feels like I got to slow down and take caution
Mhm,
because
mhm,
it's all this new terrain of because that in itself is scary.
uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, it is the never-ending battle. But it doesn't. It could be a battle, or it could be, an opportunity to dig deeper into your own wounds and heal also. And it could be an opportunity for growth. But growth is so uncomfortable, right? It feels like a
Mm.
battle. Trust me, I know all too well. We know all too well, right? We're all human. Nobody escapes it. We know that. I don't care who you are, the wealthiest to the poorest people. We're all in it together. Um, but the twin flame is such a powerful narrative, and we know that there's some misuse of it, and that's going to happen, of course. But the healed part of it, the sacredness of it, and joining forces and recognizing how to partner. And part of it is like feeling like, first of all, healing yourself, but also providing a space for men to really tap into the emotional part of their self, because that's been closed off for so long, right? and
Hmm.
and give them the space to have those moments without seeing them as weak, because that's not weakness. And I think that's something that's been kind of dictated to the masses, right? It's like, never show that sign, and it's become so hardened. Now, I believe that, taking on that warrior spirit has a purpose and a place for sure, right?
Yeah.
But 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 there's also that, let's heal from that experience as well. And it's hard, and I was talking to Pam earlier about, men coming in and having these, this hardness, but also being able to be soft when they can, and trusting that the women are going to hold them, um, and allow that for them to maneuver through that, so that then they can do what they need to do, which is focus on the external world,
Mm.
and the manifestation, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like this healing force back and forth. What do you have to say, Pam? Do you have anything to add, or what are your thoughts?
Um. Well, listen, I guess it's to me like the power, right? It's like a power control thing between the masculine and feminine.
Mm,
Um, because when you think about like the wounded energies, right? The feminine can be manipulative and cold, and so it's hard. It's hard for a man to I think get into a vulnerable space and let down his guard if he knows like it's being received by that type of energy. And it's the same thing for the feminine, right? Like she can't open up and be vulnerable and nurturing if she doesn't feel like that's received in a safe space. So I think it goes both ways for sure. And it comes down to power because, in that sense, like the masculine feels like castrated, maybe in a sense, by the feminine, like all of his power is taken away. And then for the feminine, again, it's like, I have no identity, I have no voice, like I have no purpose outside of like just being your property. And so it's about like how do we feel empowered with our own skills and gender roles and abilities, um, and still have that harmonious balance and hold that space for each other.
Uh-huh.
I guess, yeah.
And this is why. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's just what it was. I was thinking about while you were talking.
Mm-hmm. And there's this principle that we use in Tai Chi, right? And I don't know how many of you guys have done Tai Chi out there. Um, and, I talk about Kung Fu quite a bit, but I love the Tai Chi. So Tai Chi symbol is the yin yang. And when we do something called sticky hand sparring in Tai Chi, where we are blindfolded. And in our blindfoldedness, we are touching each other by our forearms. And the idea behind it, which I love, and this is kind of a principle that you could think of in the partnership or relationship, is that you're coddling an egg between you two, and you can't drop the egg, right? So that's kind of the analogy of the sticky hand, is that you don't want to drop the egg, but you don't want to be too forceful and you don't want to be too soft, so you're constantly feeling each other.
Mm,
And the idea behind sticky hand sparring is that when you're feeling each other and somebody moves in one direction, you're not using force to stop that movement. You're actually flowing with it, right?
mm,
And so Tai Chi is the one system that doesn't have any blocks in it. It's all yielding. It's all yielding, and there's no blocking. It's all yielding to everything, right? So it's like your water, and you're being fluid, but you're also feeling when someone's too hard. And if the thing between Tai Chi, what I love in the partnership, it's a partnership, right? That you're feeling is that you can tell when you become too hard, and you just the momentum stops, the movement stops, right? And it's funny because even in Tai Chi, they'll be like, oh, that person was too hard, but really it was you being too hard. And
mm,
so it just really gives you this skill of what the partnership between the two energies feels like. And
mm.
so you're moving and flowing together harmoniously, and then if a strike comes in, you're yielding it. You're not putting your force against it. And that's what made Tai Chi such a powerful system, because it redirected the force back. And um, so Tai Chi is a really good example of how we can be harmonious in our relationships with each other, not just men and women, but women and women, like that, because there's this beautiful balance between the soft and the hard. You're never too hard and you're never too soft,
Mm.
but you're coddling an egg without making it drop. So you're not forcing yourself and you're not letting go either to let it drop. You're just
Yeah.
kind of sticking and flowing together. Now, how that happens in partnership with, a man in a relationship, and I was talking to Pam, and I'm like, we don't even know how to communicate. People want to go
Right.
out and be married and have these families and, marriages and all this stuff. And men and women, at this point,
We
especially in the
can't
Western world,
talk to
don't even
each
know how
other.
we can't even talk to each other. Like, there's a power struggle. It's like we don't even have great communication skills with each other, which is
Right.
kind of sad, right? It's a sad thing.
Can't
Um,
understand each other. That's the biggest thing. And not even talk to each other, but like, how common is it for men to be like, I just don't get women. I don't understand, like they don't understand our emotions and all those things. And in the same with us, we don't understand like their logical thinking. And, why does it take 6 months to get something done when we ask for a project to happen now? Like
yeah,
those
exactly. Uh-huh,
stereotypical kind of,
uh-huh.
relationship things that come up. But for sure, it's like how do we see each other and how do we feel seen and heard by each other,
Absolutely. Yeah, and how, and I think the biggest thing, because we do talk about, like, women are becoming too masculine and men are becoming too feminine, and it's the result of the narrative and the pressures that have been put in these roles. You can't put a person into a box in a role and expect that it's going to stay there. Like, that we cannot be defined by roles and all that. Like, our essence, our internal essence doesn't have a definitive definition of what we are, right? It's like we are ever changing. But on the external, right, where we have gender, right, where we have this external, you either have the anatomy of a woman or the anatomy of a man. And oftentimes, rarely, there's both, right? Or androgynous, I believe. Um,
Yeah.
but but still, we see that the external, right? The external piece of it, it's like manifestation of the external of ideologies do not work because it's not harmonious, right? It's like this unbalanced one or the other. It's like the control thing or the power thing, right? It's like
Mm.
the men have to be hard and the women have to be soft, and it's like no man is ever soft. I'm like, that's like not true. That's not even how it works internally.
Mm.
Like, we have both this, but we've for so long talked about men women be masculine, but we haven't really addressed how men are seeking softness.
Mm.
And I think a lot of it has to do with, why we see too these men are going towards more like wanting to become feminine, because they're not getting from women, and society, the ability to express their emotional state of being. So,
Yeah.
it's like, well, then I'll just become a woman and then no one will make me wrong for feeling emotional. You know what I mean? It's like, let me dress up as a woman so I can then experience this soft side that I can't express unless I am a woman. It's okay for us to be that way, even though we're called crazy, but it's like, oh, that's just the way women are. And I feel like the healing part is allowing men, like giving men that space to be vulnerable with us and not see them as fragile or weak. Like, that's a part that I don't think women talk about as much either. You know what I mean? It's like these men have been holding on to so much war and fighting and control and power, and I mean, that's got to break somebody eventually, right? I mean, you
Mm.
can't, anger, and then just pushing down all of the pain, all of the suffering, and now it's coming spewing out. You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
revealing itself the way it is externally. So the internal wounds will express themselves externally. And then we try to fix them externally, and that's not how this gets done. It has to be an internal job.
Right.
And I think
Absolutely.
that, yeah, so for the healing, that's why I say twin flame healing, because the healing is not about us going out and figuring out how to solve this externally. It's really a big, huge internal job to get
Mm.
that done. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What do you have to say, Pam?
Well, I mean, in regards to the twin flame thing specifically, I would say like that's the whole point too of the journey, right? Is to spark all of these unhealed wounds and triggers and traumas. It's to do that intentionally.
Mhm.
So when your soul is expressing and experiencing that twin flame journey, there's stages, there's roles, there's a divine orchestration that happens. So I think just even emotionally separating from that and recognizing, like, okay, like my soul signed up for this experience and this mission. It's not about other people. It's not so much about the world. It's not having like all these things happen to me. It's about everything coming to happen for you. As hard as that can feel and be, it's definitely about growing and evolving. And so
So
I think just
I
finding a
think
place
finding a
to
place
embrace the wounds finding that space to feel safe, to go within, to look at yourself. You know what I mean? To step away from other people, and then looking like, yeah, at your own internal feminine or masculine or whatever, and recognizing like, where am I in this, like, where am I out of balance, right? Whereas there, like, there's no equilibrium there.
Right.
But I was also thinking like the workplace too when you were talking, like that was really dominant. So thinking about like men all day, or even women, right, all day out in the workforce, and you have to
Mhm.
like be something that you're not. In a way, you can't show emotions. Like, we're not set up to deal with like a nervous breakdown or anxiety panic attacks, you know what I mean? You have to be completely
Uh-huh.
professional and
Uh-huh.
mask any sense of emotion in the workplace. So when you're
Uh-huh.
doing that 40 hours a week, which is the
Mhm.
majority, of your day, is going to be in your work environment, and then you come home, and if you are alone and if you're single and you don't have people around you, like, there's no experience for growth and communication, right, and problem solving and all of those things. And so, but if you are and you do have family and you're coming home to, again, it's like everybody's energies and days, and things being triggered to bring up the healing, and we're just so not even aware or attuned to like the bigger structure of it. So we're just thinking life sucks, or you know what I mean,
Uh-huh.
like,
Mm.
or just staying in relationships that we shouldn't be in, not recognizing this was just to teach me this about myself. This was just meant to show me this part of my wounded self that needed to set boundaries and heal and grow and evolve. And instead, we clutch on and we hold on, because there's one good aspect or something feels nice, or you know what I mean? And so then we cause our own suffering by having illusions and attachments. And that can take years to recognize and break through, you know what I mean, realistically. Um, but I think the biggest thing about the whole spiritual, like, awakening, right, the whole existential crisis too, um, is that's what really, like, the dark night of the soul is really what sparks you into that awakening, into that, conscious awareness of self. Um, so I think sometimes just even working with that, space can really teach you a lot about, I needed this life altering moment, this moment of chaos, everything falling apart, um, all this pain and suffering. Like, I needed that in this phase because it ended this one section of my life and allowed a new chapter to begin. And even that little bit of healing that takes place in those moments allows a new phase where we can break the cycles, right? Where we can then learn from that and apply our wisdom now, so we don't have to like keep being the same person, right? Like, this is where we do grow and evolve, because now we're applying the wisdom and we're doing things differently. And so the biggest thing is catching on to the ego, I think, and how your ego is wired and programmed. It doesn't want to feel bad about itself in any way. It does not want to look and see itself as a bad person, or, an ugly soul, any of that displeasure. So yeah, I don't know, like, kind of
I know, and
moving
I
on
always
to
go back to
spiritual.
the acorn theory for this because I really love
Yeah,
it. And it's like the soul doesn't give a shit. Sorry
right.
for all
It's
my
gonna
cussing.
grow
I
through
really
darkness.
like to cuss these days. Okay, I'm trying to get over it. But the soul does not care where the ego does.
Yes.
And an ego death, but then an ego death is really hard. And I think as adults, right, as we're growing, I don't know if the next generation will already be hardwired. I think some of them are already hardwired for this concept, right? The twin flame concept, the rising of the new leadership, the new earth, all that kind of stuff of what is to come, because we're going through such a paradigm shift, right? It's like, but as we grow as adults, naturally we go through an existential crisis. Naturally, we go through an ego death where we're like, what the hell am I doing? And then people go off the rockers during this time because there's obviously no ritual or rite of passage um, to move us through that next stage of our life. But it really is that ego identification where we know that we no longer are our ego. and we are trying to understand why the ego is, what's happening. And it's really, this ego is like the soul's like trying to hear through and be like, yo, I'm in control here, not your ego. And so then it's like this confusion if you haven't been spiritually grounding yourself to meet your spirit, right? Where
Mm.
ego and spirit can sort of balance their self out. It can be
Hmm.
very detrimental for a human being to go through. Like, that's such a huge aspect, and it's an aspect of the twin flame. We have to go through that to really understand where we're from. And part of it was like, I'm still on, the idea that twin flames are not about being with that person. Like, I don't even believe that at this point anymore. And it's something that I think I want to research a little bit more into. But I believe that the narrative was there to help us recognize or awaken the dormant part of us that
Hmm.
wasn't awake, right? So if your
Yeah.
masculine energy was there, but your feminine was kind of more dormant, like they triggered that so that you could wake that part of you up so you can heal. um
Yes.
but not necessarily that you have to be with the individual, because again, externally you're thinking on the external. And so, the healing part is recognizing that, hey, you have everything inside of you. Like, you're powerful, you're magnificent. And then as you heal and you recognize the wounded parts of yourself that you're healing, masculine, feminine, whatever, what naturally emerges, and I know you're going to agree with me 100% on this, Pam, is what emerges is an actual external manifestation of your internal feeling
Hmm.
about how you wish to be treated, or how you're treating yourself,
Yeah.
actually, internally.
Absolutely.
And that masculine energy will show up in
Yeah.
the external. But it's not the opposite, right? It's not I go look for that and
No.
then I'm going to bring it in. It's I become it, and then it
Yeah.
shows up.
Yes.
And that's the difference, right? You have to
Hmm.
become it. You have to be it. And
Yes.
and that's the confusion with people. That's the healing they're not doing, is that they're trying to heal through another person, the masculine. And I was doing that, and I've recognized that too. And it took a friend to like open my eyes, and I was like, oh shit, I get it. Like, it just like clicked for me, and I just kind of laughed, and I was like, okay, you know, if I'm seeking to understand what a healthy masculine energy is like, then I'm seeking it externally. But if
Mm.
I'm being it and teaching myself how to be that protector and
Yes.
side of me and heal that, well, it's going to show up externally on the external world. It's just, and so it's that,
Yep.
you know what I mean? It's pretty crazy how that works. I mean, that's the art of manifestation, but we forget, and there's parts of us that don't know.
Right.
Um,
And that's the whole concept of as within, so without, as
yep,
above, so below, for
that's
sure.
correct.
Yep.
Like
It
our
mirrors
ancestors
back.
told us.
Yeah. No, I agree. When you're looking for relationships and you're like, yeah, it's coming, like you were talking earlier about the flowing with water and yielding and like surrendering, right? When you're going at everything and you're trying to make it happen because you just have this desire, this want, or this need, like then it's forceful and it's not going to, or you're just going to end up with karmic situations of lessons you've already gone through and things like you've already should have mastered, and rather than find yourself repeating. But
Mhm.
I think, yeah,
I
like
think,
you were
yeah, like
saying,
you're
when
saying,
you just focus on
focus
you
on
and do the
you
work, then it naturally
naturally.
arrives. And that's definitely what happened to me, and I wasn't expecting it or looking or experiencing it, and it was like this perfect mirror, not even like my opposite in a way, but like a mirroring kind of person that, like, yeah, is completely aligned and shows me like all of the healing like that I've done with, what I mean? It's like the just on the same path and vibration and journey. So it's definitely, it comes down to patience is the biggest thing. And there you go, like that in itself, like the themes of healing the ego with patience, because the soul doesn't see time or consider time like we do. So that can be a really hard thing to like try and heal and master is patience.
For sure, for sure.
Mm.
And once you kind of go through this healing practice, you start like it is that the natural essence of your internal healed self will manifest on the external in a partnership with women and men. And so both alike, because
Yes.
people tend to think, oh well, we go back to that all the time. It's not about relationship, but the beauty of it, and I'm seeing it in real time, which to me is quite magnificent, right? It's like, and yes, there was a lot of patience, right? I've spent
Mm.
a lot of time working on healing myself so that I can then bring to life a vision that was gifted to me, right? That was gifted, and that vision has been gifted to many people. And it takes the healing, right? It takes us actually going through the healing process to be able to receive the vision and then actually do something with the vision. And
Right.
that's what I think with the twin flame, that the twin flame is a collective vision. It
Mm-hmm.
is a archetype that is talking to us, that is, I feel like it's one of the archetypes. I don't know that it'll be the only archetype that emerges out of our need to heal these wounds that have been circulating, these old narratives, right?
Yeah.
It's a narrative. I don't want to say it's the narrative, because
No.
I think we're going to see a bunch of communities trying to figure it out, right? We see that there's these people trying to figure out what's next,
Yeah.
as this world is kind of going up in shambles in a way. We see that the tower's coming, and, the
Yep.
ones that are spiritually awake see it. We know it.
Yep.
We're not afraid of it. But we're preparing to develop something sacred and new. And one of the scenarios and one of the narratives is the twin flame. It's an archetype that's asking to emerge. Um, so the vision itself doesn't come specifically from, um, oh, I hold this sacred vision. No, the vision is going to be given to a bunch of people, and eventually those people will collectively come together to create, and to say, okay, it's time to build something new. And the twin flame scenario for me is such a powerful archetype,
Yes.
and particularly because I think it's the symbol of the yin yang, right? And the yin
Yep.
yang is a ancient symbol that's asking to it's the archetypal pattern that's asking to emerge, within us, within
Yes.
certain individuals, like I said. And that's why I think there's a lot of individuals who are, you know hearing the call of the twin flame, and that's why it's becoming so popularized. But of course people will bastardize it and use it to gain control. But when you think about the symbol of the yin yang, there is no control. It's perfect balance and harmony. So at any point that a person is feeling that there's this control or hierarchy, it's not the twin flame scenario. That's not the archetype that's emerging. It's like masking. It's like I think archetypes will mask themselves through like these other things, and then they'll reveal what they really are, kind of like the
Oh
trickster,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. I was just gonna say
It's like,
trickster.
yeah. So it's like, yeah, I'm pretending to be the twin flame archetype, but
Absolutely.
really I'm leading you to this other thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, the twin flame scenario, and the vision is something I think that grows exponentially and can grow exponentially, to be honest with you, because, I think about you and I and where we started, and knowing, and then as soon as we started saying we need to honor the men and
Mm.
bring them in, men started to emerge, right? Which is, and
Absolutely.
healed men who are seeing the vision like we are, which is pretty cool, right? So,
Yeah.
from one came two, from two came four, right?
Right.
And so on and so forth, right? And so, seeing that has emerged, and being able to work with that energy, and then to grow it and expand it is really, I mean, such a powerful experience, right? And hopefully people can get there. Hopefully more of the world is working, and especially the ones that are feeling the twin flame calling, that they're able to be led down a path that shows them what the true narrative is and what's happening, what archetypal pattern is showing up,
Yeah.
and why do we even have this energy coming to us, right? Why is it trying to tell us something? What's the
Yeah.
purpose, right?
Right. What
But
is the purpose?
right, right, right. What is the purpose? And I think so. A lot for me, the purpose is that it's we're at a time where humanity um, can survive and continue, or they can not. Right? It's like we'll go extinct one day. You know what I mean? Humans won't last forever and ever and ever. There's going to be a point where humans go extinct, just like any species. Um, but I don't think we're just done yet. Um,
Yeah.
and I think what I believe is that the purpose of the twin flame scenario is to create a new Earth, and create it
Mhm.
on the model of harmony and peace. Now, will it stay that way? No, because for whatever reason, humans like to go off kilter. They don't like to stay balanced. They just don't. It's like repeated through history.
Right. Yeah.
we want to go we want to go through extremes. We don't want to be perfectly balanced.
Right. The universe definitely goes through its planet, its cycles and whatnot, right? Of death and rebirth, and for sure. So, solar system will like collapse in on itself or something. I'm sure.
But and if we look at the balance and harmony, we are living in this perfect sort of balance, though. it
Yeah.
it, it, it takes just one thing. Even the way that the cosmos and everything is kind of, there's this like perfect balance of like expansion or contraction or expansion, and they
Yep.
think that the universe expands, but if it expands too much, it won't exist. So it's like there is this harmony. It is constantly, but it does go through growing pains to find that balance too. So it's just this weird concept. But I feel
Mm.
like we are the torch bearers of the twin flame archetype. That's how I see us.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Leadership, like
Leadership.
new paradigm.
Uh-huh. And then it's the twin flame paradigm, and that's the one that I particularly, if we talked about soul contracts, I would say it is the one that I signed up for.
Yeah.
It is the one I signed up for because there's so much connection to yin yang, kung fu, tai chi, all the internal arts that these monks, the monks were the carriers of this ancient wisdom. They were the ones who joined, because kung fu itself wasn't intended for martial purposes. It didn't start that way. They were just monks. You know what I mean? And a little bit of the story, just to bring kung fu in just a little bit, but the story, because it is such a profound thing for the twin flame scenario when you think about it. Like honestly, um, is that there was a monastery of monks, and Damo, who was actually Indian, so people don't really realize this. They think that kung fu was totally Chinese, and it wasn't. Um, it started off with an Indian. His name was Damo, and he was going through China. He was traveling, and he came across a monastery, and he was trying to teach people these like yoga kind of practices and stuff like that. And he came across these monks who were so out of shape because they were just sitting there meditating, right? And so they're just like they're out of shape, not very healthy. But he teaches the I Ching Ching, which is dynamic tension, and he gets them in shape.
Mm.
And eventually they start to practice, and eventually they start to observe nature, and try to be nature, become nature, right? Become one with the elements. Be so. And kind of what happened is they were looking how to harmonize with nature, which is what I see the twin flame scenario, right? But
Yeah.
they were Buddhist and Taoist before anything else, believe it or not, which is kind of crazy, right? Hey, Poetic, how are you? I'm glad you're on. I haven't seen you in a while. Um, well, I see you on Facebook. Well, I see you on Facebook quite a bit. Um, but they were looking for this complete balance, right? Of like, how do we balance this, and how do we become harmonious with nature? How do we become one with nature? Um, and I miss you too. We do, so you know, we actually do podcasts on Tuesday now. I don't know if you're busy or if you have work or what you're doing, but we do them on Tuesday, and it's Pam and I now. So we just been doing that. Every Tuesday if we can. It's been we've skipped. Well, Pam actually held the fort for us, um, but but yeah. So and then the balance between the two, right? And so that is why I feel, you know, when you think about Tai Chi and all this, you know, is you know, this balance between the feminine and masculine energies, but it's harmonious and it's an internal thing, right? Like Tai Chi's an internal art, um, that teaches you how to balance. But then you, again, when I was talking about like the sticky hand sparring, then you join with a partner to start to sense the external world, but your eyes are closed, right? You're not looking at them, you're feeling them, you're sensing them, you know? And so the system itself does lend to a development of a twin flame community of what it would look like, right? Of what it could potentially be, because the practices and principles, um, you know, that come with the twin flame vision, right? What are those, and how do you build a community that's healed in harmony, right? How do you take people through that transformative process and bring them to a place where they love themselves fully and they're in balance and harmony within themselves, right? So that they can then drive the vision, right? Because it's beyond
Mhm.
sexual energy, but there
Yeah.
is, and I know we talked about earlier, there is a sexual component to it if you want it to be. Of course, the monks were so focused on enlightenment.
Right.
You know, I can't say they never, I don't know. I'm not going to claim to say that they never had sex because I don't know. I would, in my utopian mind, they didn't. They were pure. They were they were able to transmute that Dantian energy, which is like your lower chakra energy, into like
Right.
pure potential, or whatever. But who knows, right? I don't know. Maybe they were. I don't have a clue. Um, but the sexual energy is very important. But that's like later. Like, how do we start to communicate? Like, what are your thoughts, Pam, on that? Like, how do we begin to heal like that communication between men and women?
Well, I really thought the whole concept of the nonviolent
Nonviolent
communication was really
communication.
important.
Mhm.
Um, just learning, like we have
Learning,
to
like we
learn
have
how
to
to
learn
speak
how
and
to speak
express
and
our
express
needs and
our
our
needs,
wants. And that's the
and that's the
basic thing,
basic
like our
thing.
tone
Like
of voice,
you know,
automatically sets the
automatically
stage for if we're going to be
for if
heard
we're
and
going to be heard.
received.
Mhm.
And then our fears, we hide our
We have
fears
fears.
behind our word choice,
Mm,
or like our desires or whatever. Like we can't, like vulnerability, right? Vulnerability becomes a block. So we have to again just start feeling like
feeling like
safe
safe.
in ourselves and in our partnerships, friendships, family dynamics, whatever. Because again, it's not about boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife kind of, things. It's about just connecting and talking in general. So I think it's about just being very simplistic and outspoken about like, this is what I need from you. And this is like why, like rather than mind games and manipulation
Yeah,
and,
you know,
all the
all the
insecurities that we
insecurity.
mask through our communication.
Mm-hmm.
And it
You
takes
know,
time to get
it's time to get
vulnerable.
vulnerable. It takes a lot of time. For some people, it's like a lifetime, right? It's
Yeah.
a hard thing for people to be vulnerable, and the practice, and then authentic, right? I know a lot
Yeah.
of those practices and principles were part of like my training as when I was going through my life, you know, life coach training and stuff like that. Is, you know, these practices of being authentic and being vulnerable and what that looks like, and um, you know, and I think dialogues between men and women is completely important. Like being able to hear, you know, and really generously listen to what the other person, what the other sexes are saying. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
what are you saying? What is the underlying reason for that? and where is it coming from? Like, what is your state of being in that moment? Like, how are you internally, right? And where is the essence of that coming from, right? Because it's funny how much we say we're not like emotionally driven when that's really all that we are is emotionally. We kind of
Right.
are like if we didn't have emotions and senses, we would just be a blob of nothing, right? You have to
Exactly.
feel, you have to sense things. I'm like, so people are like, I'm not emotional. Like, what are you talking about? You have to be. You have to be in order to survive. Even anger, fear, frustration, and all that is emotion.
Right.
You're just giving some kind of well, if you're crying, that's emotional, but if I'm angry, that's not emotional. No, they're all emotions, actually.
Right.
You're expressing something internally, right? And so understanding, it'd be very powerful to have this like dialogue between men and women where we're able to facilitate a dialogue between men and women, you know what I mean, and really start off with this kind of generous listening and effective communication and nonviolent communication where
Mm.
there is this open dialogue between men and women who are wanting to heal that partnership, that relationship, and also women to women as well, and men to men, like,
Absolutely.
how do they communicate with each other, you know um, effectively, and have these partnerships together and relationships, and then build, because like I said, you and I started off, as you and I, and now, I think we're seeing that men are showing up now too, which is really kind of cool. Like that's, I think, and a poetic knows I've been talking about building a community for a very long time. This is before I was even in our program, right? She
Okay.
was like, everybody was like, I don't know how we build a community together. Let's, and it's been, the vision's been there,
Mm-hmm.
but the ability to make it happen, because it can't just happen with people who are not willing to work on themselves
Right.
and grow and focus on themselves and grow, right? Yeah, baby
Yeah.
steps. And I think we're a bit further actually on the journey, um sort of looking at what it is and how the community could operate and stuff like that. Like, what is it going to be, how is it going to manifest, and but it is growing, and people are, I believe people will show up and want it.
Yeah.
There are the people that want it, and those are the ones that are hearing the call.
Yep.
And then some won't, and that's okay too, right? Like, you have the guy on Facebook who's like going off about feminism, and I'm like, dude, you're missing the point. But you can't.
Mm.
Well, I'm not gonna sit there and give this whole narrative that he reads and doesn't. It's not gonna change his mind about where he's at, right? Like, conscious, and his consciousness I would say, he's blue. I like to put it in spiral dynamics, right? But in at least in partnership and relationship, he's still at the, like, hierophant, right? He's still like
Yeah.
the Pope and the laws, and I see blue as like the Pope, right? The tarot, and then it's like, and then maybe in his work life he's like orange, right? Because he's like this successful guy or whatever, so he's kind of both, where he's like, yeah, I'm a capitalist, but I also believe that we should have institutional marriages and this
Right.
hierarchy, and I don't know what. And I'm like, there's this
Right.
ultimate truth to
Ex-
equality. I'm like, okay, yeah, those people probably not going to convince them through a
Right.
Facebook post, right? So it's like, I love you, whatever. What that's cool. Find your community, that maybe still holds those morals and principles, which, most people are starting to move.
Right.
That's not the paradigm anymore. You've got to change. You got to be willing to change, or you're suffering.
Right.
And,
It's like
you know,
feminism evolved out of something for a reason.
exactly. There was
And
an
you,
evolution for,
right? Because we don't want to be dominated and controlled. Like, hello.
I know. I love this community. It takes time. Some leave and some return. Yeah, and it's true. There are. And I think that's part of it. The cool thing is that we will, like, we're talking about healing the twin flame, and I think part of that healing is the community. It's building community. It's having the ability to have the community come together and start building this thing, um,
Yeah.
which eventually will happen. It's just a matter of time, and people are seeing it. They're open to it, but it's going to take a lot of people to actually make it operational.
Yeah.
For the beginning, it doesn't need to be, right. It can be a small bunch of people, which it is already, right. We're already getting interest in individuals that are wanting it. They want to be a part of it. um, I see networking, collaboration. Yes, collaborate. You already know me. It's all about collaboration. I've always been about collaboration, and that was the hard part. Is like finding people that can collaborate, because we've lived in such a competitive narrative for
Yeah.
so long. Oh my god, and and I'm like, oh, this isn't about that. This is about
Yeah.
partnership. Yeah. And poor Pam, she knows, she hears me all the time go on my soapbox. That's the twin flame. I know, it's like, but that's the twin flame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah,
is
but
an
as
isolating journey for a while too.
yeah,
And then you
and that's
want
part of.
community on the other side of that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's healing it, right? Because you had to go through your journey of healing yourself as well, right? And that
Oh
wasn't,
yeah.
you do it alone.
Yep. Yep.
you you have to.
That's why people just kind of come and go in waves to show you the
To show you.
shadows and the triggers and the wounds that need to be faced and healed so you can keep on going. And yep. And I remember thinking at one point, I just completed this phase of healing. Like I'm done. Like I just spent 2 years and I'm done.
Fine.
And it was
And
like, the universe let me continue to be naive for like another week or two before it
you
was like, oh, honey, that was just
have
one
one
cycle or
cycle.
wave. Healing is
Oh,
forever.
it is. It totally is. It is. And it's like I always say, yeah, that allows you to heal. Show us more, yeah. That's right, it does, right? Because you're like, oh, those wounds are done. No, they're not. They're re-triggered, resurfaced. And I was telling Jeremy, this, that, and I say this too, even to my listeners, I've said it a million times, that the difference between a beginner and a master is not that the master doesn't experience those pains and
Mhm.
suffering. It's that they're able to transmute it so quickly that you couldn't even tell.
Yes.
Right. It's like
Yeah.
they're able to just get it and transmute it, and
Yeah.
and you wouldn't even know that it irritated them or agitated them or they were sad or that they had, because they know how they've practiced for so long,
Yep.
transmuting these and they know themselves so much
Yep.
that they understand that they understand it. So that's the difference. And it's just a practice that is a lifelong journey, but
Absolutely.
it's not easy. And it's funny because I think that's all like with poetic. I'm like, oh, I'm glad you're on here. She's because I think you were on when I first started the podcast ages ago. And I don't know if you've talked to Linga. I haven't seen Linga in a long time. I don't know how he's doing. But I had this like this little group of individuals on our podcast, Pam, and they, they've seen me go through so much, right? Because it's like, oh, crazy. And it's true. We just go through these things, right? I haven't
Yep.
seen him either. Should reach out to him, see how he's doing. But that's the thing. It's like the individuals at the time, I wasn't even sure of how to make these things happen. And I had been doing the podcast for 4 years, and really trying to gain momentum, but I couldn't see a way forward, right?
Yeah.
And yes, I've seen your journey too. That's right, because you were like contemplating if you want to do oracle cards and stuff like that, and now you're just doing oracle cards all the time. I love it. So if you don't know, if you're not following Poetic, she's on Instagram. She's on her Instagram, and sometimes I share her stuff when I'm on there. Um, she does the oracle readings. And so yeah, so I think we're following her on Women of Consciousness, so you can always share her stuff. A master teacher of Reiki healer. Oh, yay! So we have a Reiki healer. That's awesome. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, that's
That's awesome.
awesome.
Yeah. And two, if you ever want to come on and talk with us, that would be awesome too. Like we are always looking for guests. So if you get on here and you want to just call in and you feel like you want to add, you're more than welcome to come on our show. Um, and yeah, but I had these kind of like a little group of individuals that would show up all the time. And then, they were asking like, well, what's next? What do we do? And I was like, I want to. It's like I don't know. I want to do something, but I don't know how. Right? I don't know the way forward. I don't know how to. I can't do it alone. Right? That's where the whole collaboration came in because it's such a huge vision.
Right.
And it's an archetype. Like I'm realizing now, it's this archetype that's like gnawing at me, and I wasn't sure what the archetype was at the time.
Hmm.
I could see the full picture. Right
Right.
now, I can see kind of not the full picture, but I can see the archetype that's calling to me and saying, "Yo, here, this is what I've been trying to get you to see." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, now I see what's going on." And
Right.
now it's just now it's like I have to align right myself with that energy.
Yep.
um and then once I'm able to experience be it, and it manifests out, and of course other people are getting the vision, like you,
Yeah.
John, all these people, even Poetic, right? It's like the individuals that show up are resurfacing are the ones that are like, okay, we see the vision. And now it's like ready for partnership. I could see
Yeah.
a way forward now where before I couldn't see a way
Yeah.
forward. I didn't know
Absolutely.
how. And I couldn't find the community that was doing what I want either, because I'm like,
No.
where do I go?
Right? No, I feel that for
Oh,
sure.
that's for sure.
It's been
Mhm,
5.5 years or so that I've been
mhm.
like, where are
Yeah.
you, light workers? Like, you need
Uh,
to do your work. Like, awaken and accept your mission that you're here for. Stop fighting it from your egoic level and realize your soul has a purpose and a mission. Like, get through those
through this
confidence
confidence.
blocks and like rise up in your power and meet me.
I know exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to create it. You're absolutely
Yep.
correct.
And that's where we
That's
are now, though. Like, we're in that, like you said, we're starting with looking at like what is the structure, how, right?
mhm.
Instead of just whamming like through it all, we're actually like thinking about it and being logical and, you know, I
We're
think
letting
like,
and we're letting the archetype move through us, right? We're
right?
like,
Yes, we're not forcing.
oh,
Yeah, co creating. We are co creating with the divine.
that's right.
Yeah.
This divine potential that's trying to come through, which
Yeah.
my personal opinion is that it is the most powerful symbol we have to symbolize what we would call, I don't want to say God, but how nature, how
Mm.
reality operates, or how our existence operates, because I can't claim to understand how God or goddess or whatever it is, the grand design operates. I would imagine it operates the same way because there's this balance of of potentialities, right? Like there's this
Hmm.
balance and harmony that's driving the force. But I could be wrong. How do I know? I'm too tiny, and like I always have to say, I'm too tiny and insignificant to understand the full grand scheme of things as well.
Yeah.
Just too small. But this particular archetypal energy, I believe, is the closest thing to how nature works. And it's a symbol,
Yeah.
but the symbol doesn't is just a symbol.
It's
It's
that,
just,
yeah,
yeah,
energetic
yeah, yeah.
vibration.
Yeah, it's not the actual essence of reality. It's just a symbol of the essence of reality, because we can't, you know what I mean? We have to experience it, which is why I love Kung Fu system, because it allows you to embody what that symbol represents so that you stay connected to the nature of it rather than like focusing on the symbol, right?
Yeah.
And all that external shit. It helps you to like embody it internally. So it's kind of cool, right? It's like this whole system that does that. and the system developed for to find the elixir of immortality, to be able to and be enlightened, to be able to ascend in enlightenment, not just by sitting there and meditating, but actually using your whole body, like harmonizing the entire body system, which is like, whoa, like these people were like, they're on some whole other level of something. You know what I mean? I'm like, wow. I almost want to be like, can I go back just to like peer in and see
Oh
what
my
was going
God.
on in these temples? You know what I
I
mean?
know
Like,
we've lost so much ancient wisdom.
yeah.
Oh,
And to be a carrier of this ancient wisdom of this system is like, I feel very humbled, to be honest with you. It's like,
yeah.
whoa. If I'm going to pass the torch of this, I feel very have a huge responsibility with it. You know what I mean? There's a
Yep.
huge responsibility that comes with it, where it's like, okay, and I have to dig deep. So, I'm talking to them like, okay, what is it? What is it that how am I supposed to help these people? So, again, with the healing of the twin flame scenario, again, it's you, it's yourself, and then it expands outward, right?
Yep.
Into community and having effective communication. I feel like that's kind of the starting point after you heal internally. Now, how do we communicate?
Yeah. And I think it becomes easier, like if you are on the healing journey, right? And you are dedicated and you are showing up for yourself. I think it's kind of more natural because you're going to want to express yourself. You're going to want a healthy throat chakra open, those healthy boundaries set, so that in itself sets the stage, right? Because you're not going to allow people to walk all over you while you just shut down and are mistreated. Now it's like you love yourself enough to stand up for yourself and be like, no, like I deserve this, or I want to experience this. You know what I mean? So for sure, I think they definitely do go hand in hand, but we have to be willing to make that conscious effort to like notice our words, notice their impact, right? How we're framing our sentences, even. Because that's the catch 22 of like the open throat chakra and standing in your like authentic self, is that you can then set those boundaries. But on the other side of that, people get hurt, or you know what I mean? And it's like, well, you can't be responsible for how they receive it. It's in your delivery.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I agree with
Yeah.
that totally. Something I had to learn for sure
Yeah.
was the
Yeah.
delivery.
Yeah.
I knew what I was experiencing internally, but it wasn't coming out so great externally.
Yeah. So,
And it was causing all kinds of issues.
right, exactly. Like just our tone of it's funny because I remember reading once somewhere that men, like their brains or whatever, are like wired so that when a woman like begins to speak, they register it at like this high pitched frequency, so they automatically will tune out and shut down at the sound of a woman's voice, and it's just subconsciously like become programmed in them. And
Oh
I was
man.
like, "Are you kidding me?" I'm like, "That's like how their brain, like over the decades and centuries, like learned to wire itself was to like recognize it as this high pitch, dog whistle or something and shut down to it." So like that's what we're up against, ladies. Like,
Oh my God, that's hilarious. That's
yeah.
really funny, actually.
Yeah.
I'm wondering for me, I guess my voice sounds so, I feel like I have such a deep voice. I think I have a deep voice, but could be wrong. I don't know. I'm
Oh, I
like,
know I'm loud. I know I'm loud.
oh, I'm loud. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm loud. But I don't know if my voice is high pitched. But I
Yeah.
guess it doesn't matter because it's still like, it is a different, like, obviously people know I'm a woman, right? Because we
Right.
do have this distinct, so maybe that's what it is too. It is at a higher frequency altogether, but that's kind of funny, you
Mm.
know, where it's like it's like zoning out, and me, I'll just keep talking until you start listening.
I know. I do that with my boys. I'm like, I'm not nagging you. I am literally teaching you how to be human beings in life.
Yeah,
Like, glazed over eyes, completely shut down, like, let this woman go away. I'm like, no, this is how you clean properly. It's not nagging. It's just life.
Yeah, and when you live on your own and you have a
Yeah.
disaster, right?
Yeah.
You got to teach them.
Yeah.
What That's kind of funny, and that's what explains a lot about my nephew. Because like sometimes I'm talking to him and I'm like, dude, and then he'll tell me, oh, and then I listened to this guy and he was saying this. I'm like, I just said that like 10 minutes ago. Were you not listening to me?
No.
Like, and he's probably like, no. And then he's like, no, I heard you. I'm like, no, I don't think you did. And that's fine, you know what I mean? I'm just like, whatever. It's okay if you
Right.
don't listen to what I'm saying. It's perfectly fine. But I think the generous listening piece
Mm.
is where we begin, which is why I think
Yes.
it's important that we start there because maybe we can rewire men
Yeah.
to start listening,
Right.
generously listening, and women to generously listen to men. So it's like both, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do
Yeah.
we get to that
Absolutely.
underlying thing of
Mm.
communication? So, sorry.
And that is on the other side of it, right? When the healing takes place, when the masculine has done his, feminine's done hers, like it becomes just natural. Like you don't have to work at it and make it. Like you're just already there. So like, I feel like in the relationship where I experience, seeing and speaking with a healed masculine, I very much feel seen and heard in exchange. And I know I like make him feel seen and heard. And like, right, it's like we don't have to work at communication. It's just
Mhm.
already so easy and so there
Yeah.
because we've done it for ourselves. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. And it feels good. I think
Yeah.
that, the idea of like the partnership and like having I quit having male relationships for a long time because the outcome of what would happen when I did because I wasn't healed fully. I'm not saying that the scenario pattern won't show up again.
Mm.
That is a possibility, right?
Right.
Right. But at least I have to learn and try and give it another shot where I think I'm, healed enough to have this relationship with men that's not intimate and not anything to do with sexuality or anything like that, but the ability to co-create in partnership and manifest
Right.
a vision bigger than ourselves, which should be the goal anyway of a partnership with anyone, right? Like whether it men or women. But if you're in a partnership, even if you're like, I care about this person, I'm thinking about like being with them intimately, we do it so ass backwards. We because we're visual, right? If we didn't
Yeah.
have eyes to see, I think it would be a whole different ballpark, right? But we do have eyes, and so because of that, it's kind of thrown this like wrench in relationships, right? Because it's like, well, how do they look first? And that's the first attraction, right? Is the look, and
Mhm.
then it's like, well, I just am going to jump into this because maybe at the beginning it seems like it's a right fit until you really start to see the individual's soul, and then it's like, I don't care how that you have people, I don't care how attractive or how I do not want to be with this person. They're, internally there's,
Right.
they put me through hell, where it's a very different phenomena and it's very different, right? Hello, how
Yep.
are you? Um, and so again, it's like thinking about that where if you can have a relationship with an individual and talk to the individual and get to know the individual, and really, really see their soul, like that is what's important. And not for the sake of being with that individual intimately at
Right.
all, right?
Right.
Just to be able to see them, right? And feel them and experience them. Um,
I think the strongest way to start any relationship is just to like build the foundation of friendship
uh,
and let
yeah,
it grow and evolve. And that's like what we don't do in a lot of ways when it comes to
yeah,
dating, right?
sure.
It's like we know we want like a significant other. We know we want, maybe marriage or whatnot. So it's like
So it's
we
like
just want to jump to it. We want to be in the relationship that's going to lead right to marriage
right here.
immediately from the first date. And that's not realistic. That's not how it works. And we all have wounds and heart chakras. And I would definitely say, like, some of the darkest, lowest vibrational, like demon, ugly energy of the universe hides behind the most beautiful faces. And so that in itself, talking about that kind of, that part of the superficiality of us and all, I think some of that is an energetic trap, like vampires, narcissists, right? Type energy. To be, it's almost like you think of like the animal kingdom, right? Like these big, beautiful insects or whatnot, or flowers or whatever. And then they're like the most poisonous and deadly.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
So, like be careful what you're looking for in a person, right? Feel out the energy of that they're giving off, right? Behind the mask. For
Yep.
sure.
Yep.
Learn your
Yeah.
lesson and walk away.
Yeah, I mean it's really and it's hard, right? The our vision has given us sort of kind of set us back, and in a way not, like you said, because I think those if you want to call them beautiful on the outside and crazy on the inside or whatever, are there to trigger us and teach us lessons too, right? And we have like
Absolutely.
folklore behind that, of course. There's always a
Yep.
Beauty and the Beast is the biggest one, right? It's like,
Yeah.
the old lady comes and he's like, no, and then she turns into this beautiful princess and he's like, oh man, what did I do? And she curses him for that, It's
Yep.
like, it's just a myth or an analogy to remind us that, looking at someone's soul and not for relationship per se, like, but to even get to know people, like to
Right.
even
Yeah.
understand who they are, so, because people are like, well, it's about relationships and,
Right. Well,
and it is
everything,
actually.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
everything is a relationship for sure. And I think that's one thing people don't realize or recognize, right? They just think romantic relationships, but it's like your food, entertainment, work, like everything that we have is a relationship. We just got to figure out like how we engage and interact. And there was one thing I had heard once from Teal Swan, who I like on, I follow her on YouTube every now and then. I'll watch videos or have some of her books. But she always talks about like there's you, there's the other person, and then the third entity that's kind of separate, but still connected is the relationship dynamic. So it's its own entity outside of the both of you as
As
individuals.
individual.
And
Yep.
that was a really cool eye-opening perspective for me when I heard that years ago.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's all crazy, right? Relationships, and I think it's a big hot topic because most people want to be with somebody, or most people are looking, or most individuals are really grounded in, well, we call it the Dantian. You would call it the lower chakras or the root chakra,
Yep.
right? And that potential energy. And trying to figure out how to even work with that energy, right? So some people are just very highly sexual. Some
Yep.
people and 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 they're trying to figure out that energy, and so they're stuck in that kind of bestial, really stuck in the body, right?
Yep.
And so it's like, well, how do we transcend that or move that up so that we can start to experience like other human beings, right, beyond that sexual connection or whatever. So it is hard with relationships, you know what I mean? And it is looking to, really understand individuals, because here's the deal. Like, yes, it's great, right? And sometimes people will meet each other and maybe they're like attracted to each other, and they have this connection, and then they even try to be sexual with each other and it doesn't even work out anyway. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Because if you're working, and I know you'd want to talk about sexual energy, and I don't mind going a little bit longer, to talk about it, but um, when you're trying to bridge the gap, because sexual energy is such a powerful tool, that people don't know how they don't know how to use it properly, right? Nobody
Mm.
teaches us. They're not just like in school, like saying, "Hey,
Right.
here's how you use your sexual energy." They're like, "No, don't think about it. It's bad," and they're
Right.
telling us
It's a
that
lot of
because they don't
shame.
want us to tap into that,
Yeah.
potential, which is powerful. They're just like,
Yeah.
hell no, now.
It's a life
Um,
force.
The life force. Yeah, exactly. So, how do you move that life force? And when you can find an individual that is working specifically on healing and all that kind of stuff, and you can come together, and that's why they had tantric, right? The tantric
Mm,
sex and all that stuff. Um, when that's why they had it. Okay, and the tantric was so that you can use that life force to create and co-create,
mhm.
right? Such a powerful thing. And I know that you wanted to sort of talk about kind of what that sexual potential was. So tell us, give us some ideas about it.
Yeah, so I think like every human on our own individual level, like we all have like undeveloped or wounded sexuality, right? And maybe that's why people don't experience like a high level, right? They have like this dormant, they don't want intimacy, like they don't need it. Maybe there's a block there or whatever, and then I think for like higher energy, like sometimes that can get people in trouble, right? Because you've got to then learn almost like that inner dragon. You got to learn to tame the energy rather than it to like lead you through like sabotage and self-destructive behaviors. Um, but from the healing point of view, I guess what
Yes.
I want to
What I want
say
to say.
is that like as you grow and heal and evolve, like the sexual part of that grows and
Right.
evolves too. So when you're now
So when
looking at
you're now
this
looking
new
at this
paradigm
new
of relationship and partnership, and when it is intimate and
relationship and
sexual
sexual
energy is being brought, into that equation, I think it comes a point where it's conscious responsibility about what you're
about what
using intentionally that energy for. And so with the power of like the life force energy that's within the
that's within the word.
orgasm, and this is where like sex magic comes in and the creation, like you said, like you tap
You
into
tap
like that
into
creative, third eye sexual energy, like you had said, bringing it up from those lower chakras, right? And so I think right now it's about self gratification, like how in these wounded relationships it's just how can I have pleasure to my body, and I think that's even where men and women are so out of alignment because women feel like men are
it.
selfish, we're
Yeah.
not, our needs aren't exactly top priority. um there comes a place when you move through all of that woundedness and you come into like a healed sexual energy that I think it leads you down the path of tantric if you choose that, if that, appeals to you in any way. But there is a more sacredness. And I think this is where like the whole love making,
Mm,
term came in that I don't know, it sounds cliche now or whatever. But I can remember it would make me cringe like as a kid, like, like it's, but I don't know, just hearing that term. But it's true because you fully recognize and understand the energy exchange that is happening between your body and their body. um and then the power, I think, to tap into like the collective, and again, if you're an energy worker like I am, like, there's a lot of potential to heal the collective with that energy. So
mhm.
but like you said,
Really cute.
communication is the first step. There's stages and there's steps, but it grows and it evolves and it's all entwined and entangled. So as you do the more of the work on yourself, again, yeah, that as within, so without, it just aligns and it evolves. So I think we need to look at sexuality. Like we need to explore that as we're exploring the healing between masculine and feminine,
Mhm.
especially with like porn and you know what I mean? All of these industries that are just meant to keep us at a low vibration, like, organization, religion, like to fear you and shame you about, touching yourself, like all of these things where it's that life force
Like for
has really been disempowered from
words
us
from
and
us.
kept from
They have
us. So like there's a deeper, and that's a whole
that's a
nother
whole
like
nother
episode really we
episode.
could dive into. But I
Yeah,
think
and
it's
I think
about
it's
empowering
critical.
and healing as well.
I think it's critical. I think it's
Yeah.
critical because you're correct in like, people that are like pulled into this like sexual energy in the lower vibrational frequencies, and like you said, just for their own self gratification and
Mm,
not really understanding the potential of the energy itself, right? Of what it's designed for, right? And what it means is it keeps you grounded, and not truly manifesting what
yeah.
you want in life either, because you're so stuck in the lower chakras, if you will, or we, like I said, we call it the dantian, right? That's what it's called. but
Yeah.
but you would call it like the root chakra, or the I think it's the root.
Yeah.
So
The root and the sacral.
the sacral and the root, right? Where it stays stuck there, your energy can't move up. And so, and it is such a huge thing, because guess what? Sex is such a huge thing. And
Yeah.
here's another thing that I just want to point out, before we get off here, is that as this is always what I loved about these
It's fun.
podcasts, right?
Yeah.
Is the second that you shift energy, you magnetize the energy you're talking about. And this is real time manifestation, right? The second we switched to sexual energy, we received energy from sexual people.
Yeah.
That is the potential that we hold to magnetize the individuals that are here. And as soon as we start talking about something different, those people drop off, right? And so it's
Yep.
always been an interesting phenomenon for me when I would do my podcast, because people would show up exactly when I was talking about a specific thing, right? And if you look at the comments, right, you look at the
Yeah.
comments, and they were all sexual, right? As we switch to sexual energy, our talk, our vibration. And it's kind of funny, because and you kind of for me, when I was doing that, was the ability to say, where is the healing needed most? Because where we're meeting people at, right? And then the comments, and it's like, okay, if we see these comments, we can kind of see where there's this kind of stuckness, right? In terms of
Yeah.
it, like, where's the stuckness? How do we support individuals to move up? And how do we meet them where they're at, so that we can, lift them up if they're ready or not
Mm.
ready? Doesn't matter either way. But it always, I just had to point that out, because it's always like, see, that's how the universe works, and I'm not even doing anything, right? We're not doing anything but just communicating, and that's manifestation at its
Right.
finest in real time. You know what I'm saying? It's kind
Yeah.
of crazy. Anyway, I just thought I'd point that out. I'm sure you read all the comments. Or
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. I followed along.
Yeah. And so then you can see, right, what showed up, right? Which is funny.
Yeah.
It cracks me up every time. So there's that. So I think we're coming up at like it's a long podcast. But hopefully people will listen where they need to, and they get something out of it. And then Pam will be on next Tuesday.
Yep. We'll figure out a topic, but yes.
Yeah, and then also, Poetic, if you start coming in on Tuesdays, whenever you're on, and if you want to be part of the discussion, you can call in and we'll add you to the discussion. We're all for, even if you wanted to do a reading for the day, you're more than welcome. Pam does. We all do card readings, so that's
Yeah.
good.
It's fun.
Um, but if you wanted to talk about your card for the day, or what you pulled, or what you're seeing, or kind of like just kind of sharing what we feel is to come, or what we're seeing, or what we're feeling. So I work Tuesday. Yeah, we can figure something out, definitely. Yeah. And if you work Tuesday, and there's like a day that if you ever want to just come on and stuff and figure something out, we could do that as well. Just let us know. I really want to have more people on here, more guests, you know what I mean? More insights and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
just let me know. You can reach out to me on Instagram if you want to, or Facebook, or whatever you use. And then we can, determine um, if you want to come on, it would be good. And it'd be good to get insight as to where you see things going as well, too, like energetically, where you see kind of the world, like those insights of like what we collectively kind of sees about to happen, right?
Mm.
Yeah, multifaceted network for sure. We need it. We've needed it for a long time. And I think we're recognizing it and we're waking up to it. So that's good.
Yeah.
And now we're learning how to partner, right? That's what this whole thing was about. Like when you're healing internally, how do you partner? How do you come together? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, brings synchronicity eventually. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you have it. Any last words, Pam?
No, it was great. I'm good. I don't know.
Awesome. Well, happy New Year to those individuals
Thank
who are
you.
celebrating, and we will see you in the new year.
Yep. Happy New Year.
Bye.
Bye.